Welcome to Translation Confidential. This is Peter Argondizzo and Patrick Daley. Thank you for joining us. 2025 predictions in review, and also our predictions for 2026. Patrick, this was fun preparing show notes for this. It actually looked like we might know a little bit about translation.
Yeah, I think we can retitle this one "Look How Smart We Were for Last Year."
Yes.
And hopefully we're that smart again for next year, is the working title I have in my head.
I think that's accurate. So why don't we start? Why don't we talk a little bit through? Why don't we work through them and just talk, a little bit about each of the 25 ones. So let's start there. And we had said, well, M&A will increase. And it's funny because I think the year didn't necessarily start that way. But suddenly the second half of the year has been really active. If you think of PE money, if you think of like Proprio and everything they're doing, and a lot of PE money that's rushed into folks that have some sort of software, like Lilt acquiring SmartLing, and those are all examples of a lot of money coming.
Yeah, I feel like we're seeing a bit of partnership between maybe translation management systems and content platforms as well. So it may not be M&A of different LSPs, or what's the other one, language LTIs? That's the new
Lilt
term.
language technology integrators. Is that what it is? Yes.
It may not
this
be
week.
It may not be those companies necessarily buying each other, but a little bit more of tangential M&A that can really help arm, let's call it like a translation ecosystem, for lack of a better term, of like, hey, we want to make it easier to translate this content. So we bought this platform that allows us to do that.
I definitely think that that's the play, and we'll see more of it. I think we'll talk about that in our 2026 predictions. But this is not a head scratcher, but we had said that Gen AI usage was going to be on the rise, and that human in the loop quality checks were going to be very important. And I think overall that's been accurate. I mean, I think, there are many tools that would rather just say, hey, you don't need humans anymore. This is awesome. We're just going to translate this stuff and it'll be great. And I think that very quickly sort of hit a plateau, and people are realizing that, yeah, maybe not so fast. I think there's still a spot for humans in this these workflows.
Yeah, and I think too, I think clients leave it to their service provider to appropriately manage risk for them, like on their behalf of those programs. And if you are just fully and blindly deploying AI, that's probably not going to net you the best results in the long term. So I think we've seen a bit of, I would say, surface scratching in AI, or testing and limited deployments, but I think those will continue to grow and grow. But I honestly haven't seen like a fully AI or automated solution that does what it promises, or some of those meets those lofty expectations that you might see in some product demos.
No, and I think, it's what we've always talked, or we talk about often on the show, is that the problem is that 96% of a translation may be correct, but boy, it may really have a problem on that 4%, and that's what people are going to judge you on, and it might be very material, and it brings into question the whole validity of the whole job.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have that human in the loop, and let's not forget, again, kudos to all the translators all these years, working hard on helping amass translation memories that have built the engines that have created these abilities, right? So I think it's in our best interest to keep translators engaged, and we'll talk about that as well. But this one was interesting too. We were saying that there's going to be some regulations around AI, and I think we were smart to say that, because that's very true. You see the EU, EU AI Act took effect in the middle of the year, and it's creating compliance pressure for providers using LLMs in translation. You've seen states in the union, other forms of AI, say that, hey, you can't use AI for counseling. You can't use AI for employment selection, right? A lot of companies are using AI to weed through resumes and such. So a little bit tangential to our business, but I think you're going to continue to see that. And I think, we'll talk about that. I think we've got a new spin on that one.
I think bringing transparency around AI usage on the provider side is going to continue to grow. I think I've seen scopes of works from other companies that say, hey, AI is part of our workflow and here's how we use it. And I think putting those qualifiers around it is super important of, hey, we might use AI to brainstorm or to do X, Y, and Z, but it will not be a copy paste and no human review workflow. Like, that's just not how we operate.
It's not going to happen. And growth in non-document translation, that's absolutely accurate, right? How much, I think this is all the boom that sort of Netflix and the others sort of started, and that ball's continued to roll. Most of these platforms have automatic captioning of some form or another. There's tools out there that will help with ADA compliance of videos to do descriptions, visual descriptions of what's going on screen for non-audio videos. Those are all AI-based tools, and I think we're going to continue to see that, and I think that also helps our idea of where the market's going to go in the future. So we'll talk about that one as well, but I think that one's accurate.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I probably made the joke in our predictions episode last time that print media is dead, but to a degree, like, I think you're seeing the real boom of translating things that really go far and beyond just print media, which may have been the bread and butter in the past of, here's a Word doc, here's an Excel file, here's a PowerPoint, I need it translated. I think you're going to find and continue to see lots of other things that other mediums that need to be translated. And I think we've talked about it too, how AI can help in video and subtitling, whether it's doing a first pass transcript or like kind of getting you started a bit faster than the process used to be of just kind of like, okay, we need to hire a human transcriber who's sitting there with a foot pedal and doing all the timing for us. It's like, hey, maybe we can make that process a bit faster nowadays.
Absolutely. And to me, that's like the spirit of using AI in the right way in business, right? Is that looking for administrative tasks that it can handle well and can handle easily. It allows for people to use a higher value use of their time, right? And all these things, what does it sound like? The Industrial Revolution, right?
But now it takes you 5 minutes to review that auto-generated transcript and clean it up rather than 4 hours to sit there and type it.
So you can do more, right?
Which,
so isn't that
AI
the theory?
AI transcripts do make me laugh. I can send some screenshots of just funny stuff that they've spit out because, I mean, I use it for like meeting notes and documentation and stuff like that. And sometimes it just completely makes stuff up or like does not understand the words that we're saying in it.
Well, and my favorite sport now is reading the slick AI recaps of channels in Slack. And it's actually quite amusing. What it determines to be important is beyond me. So yes, we cannot completely abdicate to them. Certainly more on-demand tools will emerge. Yeah, instant translation is real. It's out there. But, again, it's using the right tool for the right application is still going to be king. And I think client education is going to continue to be important. But we were correct that you're going to see a lot of on-demand translation. I think it's probably starting to plateau a little bit. Everything already has it in it kind of thing. But we'll talk about that in the predictions for this year. And money is the memory, TMs, translation memories and terminology as strategic assets. Absolutely. I think some of the acquisitions that we saw in the last year were based on assets that people had around translation memory. I know when we're looking to acquire, it's something that we're looking at as well, is to say, hey, there's domain assets that could really help us build really good workflows for specific industries. And that's an asset that's important. You're going to see, we had Dan Milcharski from Blackbird on a few weeks ago, and, they just came out with their data lake idea, which is essentially taking any of their workflows and attaching them to a translation memory database. They call it a data lake, but that's essentially what it is. It's just a big database of stuff you've already translated, and that allows them to attach it to other things. So I think, again, you're going to start to see more and more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really showing how valuable and strategic that data can be in those conversations. And I think if you think of it, but there's obviously a different scale, but imagine having a custom GPT to like just do one part of your job. And now you've got this AI trained database to do that part of the translation process. That's kind of where my head goes in terms of analogies. It's like basically you've got a custom GPT to do the thing for that client. It's very specific to them, and it's built in a specific way for that purpose. So it's not just this general like AI chatbot, which is what ChatGPT is, but it's very, very trained and refined to do a very specific thing for you.
Absolutely. And as much as people want to say that translation memory is for a bygone era, I don't agree. I think that's the glue. That loop, we talk about the human in the loop, and the corrections that they make that flow into that database, whether it's translation memory, a data lake, whatever it is, that's incredibly important because AI will just continue to reinvent itself. And if you're looking for consistency, which most translation projects rely on consistency, you need that piece. And if you don't have that piece, it doesn't.
Well, I think you can look at even just, out of the box ChatGPT. I mean, I use it at work all the time for various things. And sometimes it does the contextualizing for me. I might present a scenario and it's like, at Walker Sands, think about this, 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 and this. So like it's training itself. So just imagine how much more your ChatGPT knows now versus when you started, and think of translation memory the same way of like, it's already doing the heavy lifting for you to get you to a much better point and much faster.
The two tools together are amazing. And our last one was that TAF, obviously translation as a feature would be everywhere. And that's very, very true. I think what we're going to continue to see is probably more sober approaches to it. But yeah, we did pretty well, Patrick. I think that might be the best we've done. We've done quite a few of those. Not that we've ever been completely off the mark, but I think those were pretty good. But let's
part one, we're smart.
Yeah. So
moving into part two.
Part two. Hopefully we're saying the same thing next October. But I guess we should talk about, we did this kind of twofold, because like in the spirit of embracing all things AI, we said, why don't we come up with our predictions? And we came up with 4 really solid ones. I think we'll have a 5th bonus one. But then we said, hey, what does ChatGPT think are the big things for next year? And some of them are pretty good. Some of them overlap with ours. And some of them are really dumb. So this will be fun. We get to make fun of ChatGPT. This will come to haunt me at some point when the Matrix takes over. I realize that. But
don't worry, they'll do 3 sequels and you'll forget about it.
Yes, exactly. Depends which pill I take. So all right, so let's roll into our predictions. Patrick, why don't you take the first one?
Yeah, I think it's cheating a little bit, but I think M&A is seeming to not go anywhere. I think we'll see a lot more consolidation, whether it's existing players in the translation space scooping up other agencies, or whether it's kind of outside PE money coming in to build it into their portfolios. But I think that M&A is here to stay, and I did not mean to rhyme that, but it just worked out that way.
Yeah, it was really good. And I think there's a third wrinkle to that maybe we haven't been talking about in years past. But I think we're going to start to see some agencies that might just wrap it up, that have decided not to change the way they do business, have decided not to embrace AI in any way, shape, or form in their workflows, have decided to keep their technology stack as slim as possible. Trados alone just isn't going to do it. Unfortunately, Trados by itself isn't going to solve it.
Yeah, I mean, even thinking back to the last time I was working in the translation industry, which it blows my mind, that was almost 4 years ago now, but there's still there's time and energy to be spent making sure your files can fit into your translation management system. So if you take that step out of the equation and just everything can go into your translation management system, that just makes you as a provider that much more valuable and helpful to your clients. And the less time you can figure out how to get that content in and more focused on getting it out quickly, I think you'll just open yourself up for much more business that way.
Absolutely. So let's see. Hopefully that one's on the mark. I'll take the next one, which is basically that TAF is going to plateau. I think, there'll still be players that are entering, are a little late to the game. But I think what you're going to start to see is that idea of some governance on how AI is used in translation, and what are you doing about quality? What are you doing about accuracy? What's the loop? Because I haven't seen many talking about that. If you go to have a chat with any of these folks that have folded translation as a feature and you say, well, what if I want to make a change? Well, you just change it. Great. And what if I put that same sentence in next time? It's just going to come up again. There really isn't that loop. And
what's the definition of insanity?
Yes, exactly. So that's where I think players like Blackbird and others are going to make a big difference, is because you will, even if it's even if you're just making a change, you, the user, are making a change because you get some feedback, even if you don't have a translator in the loop, but maybe you have a reviewer that works in-house or whatever the case is, the ability to close that loop is going to be really important.
Yeah, and I feel like the ongoing joke in the language industry is that people have been saying machine translation is going to take their job for 30, 40 years at this point, and it just hasn't happened. And I think similarly here, I think machine translation in its peak and in its heyday definitely did plateau and had its use cases and had where it fit into the equation, but it was not the full equation by any stretch of the imagination.
I would agree. And that dovetails really well into number 4. We'll come back to number 3, but it's the role of the translator is going to continue to evolve, right? And I think that that's really the key is it's not a replacement. And I keep telling people that, and I keep getting notes from folks that are either at educational institutions that are saying, hey, is there a role for translators in the future? Yes, absolutely is. But guess what? You know what they're not going to do? They're not going to do what we did back in 1992, 98, 95, 95. Sorry. I had to do math in my head. 1995 when we started, and I had a shelf full of dictionaries, of technical dictionaries. They're not going to be looking at technical dictionaries to find a term. Instead, they're going to be using the resources that they have online. They'll be using ChatGPT. The agencies that they work for will be using AI tools that are married in with trained engines. That's what's going to be happening. So it's going to evolve. It's just going to be different. And those that learn how to do it are going to succeed, and those that don't will not.
Yeah, I think, and this is one that both we came up with in our notes and that ChatGPT also prompted us with. But I think some good points there too is, like you said, translators will be more likely to be like tuning the machine translation output or the LLM output, or validate that what comes out of AI is good, bad, right, or wrong. So I think you'll see a little bit of, like you said, kind of redefining what it means to be a translator. Still extremely valuable in the process, but I think what they'll be doing will just look a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. And the last one that we have 4 solid ones this year, not 7 like last time, but 4 solid ones. And I think they're multiple parts, right? So the market will be steady. So my theory is, if you look at the global translation industry and you look at the revenue, I think it's going to be pretty steady. And some people are going to be wringing their hands saying, no, the translation industry is dead. You see it's either plateauing or maybe even shrinking a little. But I'm certainly not a genius, but I think it's easy to say that what's going to happen for agencies like ours, translators that work for agencies like ours, if you used to handle 2,000 words in a day, you're probably going to handle 4,000 words now, 8,000 words. And it's like you're more of a full-time editor than you are a from scratch translator. I think that's just the reality of it. So what does that mean? That an agency will actually process more jobs, process more words. And I think until companies catch up with their automation technology, with handling more jobs, being able on their platform to accept more jobs, there'll be a little bit of a plateau effect. And my guess is we'll see it this year, and I think we'll continue to see it next year. But as companies start to learn how to harness it, it should be a multiplier. And I also think there'll be the top of the funnel should expand, right? There'll be more work that flows in because the companies and organizations, government or otherwise, that wouldn't have translated, well, right now the government doesn't translate anything, our federal government, but it'll grow, it'll expand. At some point, we can't afford translation. Oh, now we can afford some level of translation. It's going to expand. So that large expansion that we saw back in the 90s when translation memory technology came to be, the EU regulations came to be, that was a huge expansion in the translation market. I think you're going to see it again, but it's going to have a slightly muted effect. And we don't typically talk about politics, but I'll just touch on this. Tariffs aren't great for international business, period. It's not debatable. They're not good for international business. So that'll continue to be a headwind. Good, bad, or otherwise, I'm not here to say that. I'm not an economist. All I can say is that from empirical evidence, we have a lot of clients that are manufacturers, and tariffs are uncertainty, and uncertainty equals less translation work. Period. Full stop.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting prediction, but I like kind of going beyond that. I think beyond like what will happen in 26, I think if we expand that to 2030, like you said, like the growth of the industry is still going to go up and right in the graph. We just might be at more of a stagnant or flat point in time right now. But I think overall, like you said, the barrier to entry to get translation services has basically vanished. So I think you'll find a lot more people at least starting out into the industry and getting dipping their toe in the water with translation services, and then, as you said, maybe once budget opens up, I think you'll see a big expansion of those services over time.
Absolutely. Well, those are great. That wraps up our predictions. And now I think we should say what I used to call ChatGPT, our drunk uncle. Let's see what the drunk uncle at the Christmas party say. Hey, drunk uncle, what are your predictions for 2026? Let's go through those. I think the first one's actually pretty good, Patrick. It kind of dovetails into what we've been saying, but it's basically saying that that providers who harness AI and use it as a differentiator. In other words, they make custom GPTs or custom workflows that leverage translation memory are going to succeed.
I like how self-aware our ChatGPT is. You ask AI how for predictions of 2026 in the translation industry, and first answer is, "We'll use AI."
Yes.
They're just doing their own sales process on us. But to your point, I think it is right. And we talked about it a bit in our predictions, even from last year, is that the money's in the memory and that's not going anywhere. Of like, imagine starting with a trained engine versus a brand new engine. Like your trained engine is going to outperform the new engine very, very quickly. So I think, again, we keep saying how valuable data and translation memory is. And I think that will continue to be the case as AI becomes more widely adopted.
I would agree. I think that one's pretty good. Wow, look at this one. Translator roles evolve into AI language specialists. I want to make sure to say one thing is that we did this after our predictions. So that's good. But I mean, I think what did chat do? If it were smart, it went to Nimsy, it went to Slater, it trolled the web, it trolled LinkedIn, it probably, it just looked for data, and it's, it's living in our world, and it found stuff that we read as well. So it's not a big surprise that it says, yeah, it agrees with us on translator roles evolving into AI language specialists. I like that. This one I patently disagree with, Patrick. Why don't you tear into this one? You start.
Yeah. ChatGPT said that pricing models will start to move away from per word. And maybe rereading it, I could get slightly on board with it of start to shift away from per word. But I think we've both kind of agreed that we've been hard pressed to find another metric for how you charge for language services outside of per word or per hour, which is all just an extrapolation of per word anyways. Not sure how that will work. I mean, it mentioned subscription pricing, which I could see happening, but I feel like it's going to be subscription plus usage, which is subscription plus per word in my mind. So I think to me, I haven't seen a way around per word completely. I think it's still definitely in the mix for how people will be charged for it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and part of it is because that's still where the industry lives. Let's say we build what we've done quite a few of these for clients. You build a custom machine translation engine based on past work, translation memory database. Well, Azure charges you by the word. Google's API charges you by the word. DeepL charges you by the word. So if you're looking to match your input cost to your delivered project cost, it's still going to be per word. And I've never been a big fan. I've had clients in the past say, well, would it make sense to just charge by the hour? Well, maybe, but here's the thing with that. So you give me a 14 language project, and on average, all the translators spend 6 hours, except for one translator, he spent 12. So how do I go to you as my customer and say, hey, Patrick, everybody spent 6 hours, but this person spent 12. I think a client is very quickly going to be like, I'm not so sure about this per hour pricing anymore.
Right.
Could we limit it, or could you replace that person? And then you see it from the translator's perspective. I mean, I don't know. I mean, human nature is human nature. I don't think maybe out of sheer malice or malevolence, someone's going to take longer. But I don't know. What's your motivation to finish faster? I don't know.
It's not money.
Exactly. So I don't see that model. I mean, you're right. I think in a perfect world, Patrick, like some sort of flat fee to provide an engine plus usage. But then you're right. Okay, usage
Per word.
I don't see it. I think that's a little bit utopian to think.
Yeah, I mean, it's saying like basically like the value conversation is here, which like sure, but you have to be able to quantify that somehow and can't just say, okay, this translation, the value that this delivers is X amount of dollars. Like you still have to break it down and quantify it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
Because at that point, then it's
it.
like, okay, what if the client sends you something that's low value? Are you going to charge versus like something that's really important to them? It's like, oop, ring the register. This one's really important. Like the value is high. I'm going to charge you way more. Like that doesn't seem right.
No, because then what you do is, it's high value. Let me pull some humans in the loop who want to charge by the word. So it's like
Right.
I don't, I think all roads kind of would it change? Will it change? Eventually, I think. I don't know if it's 2026. I'm gonna.
I don't see that going away completely, really, ever. Like we said, like even if you get into a subscription model, that's going to be subscription plus usage, not
Plus
just a
usage.
flat subscription fee.
Yeah. Next one, AI governance becomes a selling point. Well, we kind of talked about that. I think people are already asking as if we, for example, we have a reseller agreement with Kudo, so we use the AI speech translator function for real time interpretation or speech translation on a call, similar like to this one. Well, people are starting to ask, well, where does the data flow? Who has access to it? Those are all like valid questions. And I think people don't ask enough. I think, if I had to add one back to my list, I'm going to say client education is still king. It's been king for 30 years. It's going to continue to be king because people are not transparent when they do these quotes, right? I think that's going to be, for us, I know that's key. Our whole new quoting system, very much front and center. If we're using AI, it says AI plus one linguist or plus two linguists. And we as an organization insist on that level of transparency. But I guarantee you that when someone's going out there getting 3 quotes, they're seeing, oh yeah, you got a quote that's 30% less than yours. Well, yeah, it's just straight AI.
That's
I'm not sure
I
how to
can't
slice that another way.
yeah, I can't remember the exact article I read, but someone sent it to me and it said I think it was Deloitte had to pay back the Australian government part of a contract because they put like unedited AI into part of the work that they did for them. And the Australian government called them out on it. So they had to like refund money back from Deloitte to the Australian government. So to your point, I think having some sort of governance in place will definitely set you apart. And ChatGPT seems to think that having some sort of AI governance could be as valuable as having some of the ISO certifications, which I know we've talked about in the past as well, of like how those are a good indicator of quality processes in a translation workflow. So that to me will be really interesting to see, like you said, how transparent providers are about when and where they're using AI. And I think we've talked about buyer education a ton, but buyers should be asking tons and tons of questions about AI and when and where it's used in their workflows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The next one that the Matrix came up with was integration over innovation. I actually like that one. I can get behind that. I think connectors are going to continue to be important. Being able to address an organization and say, hey, we can handle your SharePoint data, your WordPress data, your Office 365 documents that live in SharePoint, your SharePoint articles, your telephonic interpretation requests. To say you can handle all that and use and leverage the same pile of information is going to continue to be more valuable. I love that.
Yeah, I
You said
think
something in prep today that I like.
yeah, I
Which is
think like providers that are um, like platform or deliverable type agnostic, as we've talked about. Like, we can do websites, we can do videos, we can do fill in the blank, like this type of deliverable. I think that will be a big selling point, rather than like, ooh, we specialize in subtitle translation or what. I think that's going to start to go away if it hasn't already. And it's just like, what do you have to translate? Yes, we can do that. There's the providers that are going to set themselves apart.
I agree 100%. So I think that'll be important. M&A fatigue sets in. I don't agree with this one. It's the M&A. So it says, here's the soundbite. The M&A honeymoon is over. Now it's about digest. I'm not sure where it got that from, but according to our prediction, we're saying it's going to continue. And I would agree. I think there's going to be more consolidation. I think more PE money is going to come in. I think there's going to be companies that are trying to build verticals, Patrick, where they marry companies and content creators of all different types. And I think there'll still be heavy demand for folks that understand translation and translation technology. So I don't see that. I don't agree.
Yeah, I think, as we talked about too, it may not be language companies buying language companies and consolidation from that perspective, but I think it might be, for lack of a better term, outsiders, whether that's other companies or PE firms, kind of adding to their portfolio, and kind of translation as a capability or language services as a capability, rather than kind of rolling it up into an existing provider.
Yeah, agreed. Next one, multimedia localization goes mainstream. I don't know. I think its major tenet here is that, I like this. If 2025 was the year print media died, 2026 is the year every company becomes a media company. I don't think so. That's not certainly where our area of expertise is. This has been something that people have talked about for years. The idea of people building a vertical, and we've seen it in real time. And I'm not criticizing others that have tried it, but you look at SDL in the day. This is pre-RWS. SDL buys Tridia, the content management system, because hey, we're going to sell an integrated workflow. I think those realities just haven't occurred. I'm not 100% sure why, but I think it's because people like to buy best of breed, right? You don't look and say, well, this company has a pretty average workflow from start to finish. It's real good. You put something in the front and you're going to get a pretty average press release out the other side. It'll be translated in 14 languages in a pretty average way. Nobody's signing up for that. I don't.
Think about it too. I know this is an easy punching bag, but I feel like HR software always runs into that of like, they're like, oh, we do payroll and we do taxes and we do 4K and we do performance reviews and we do this and we do this and we do this. And it's like, 2 of those are good and you do them really well, and the rest of them are garbage. So we need like 3 HR systems to do the things that we want to do. And everywhere I've worked, I feel like that has happened, where it's like, ooh, this system does this one thing really well, so like that's what we're going to use out of that system. So to your point, I don't know that there's one solution out there that's like everything works. It's kind of piecing those together. And like we talked about, that's where the integrations will become more and more important, of like, those systems need to work together rather than like manually trying to combine all those together.
I agree. And it's funny, this is not a new premise. I can think of back in, I guess it'd be about 1999, 2000, maybe it was around that time frame, when we went to a translation management system that had an authoring assistant. So what it did was pretty smart, actually, if you think of it. Used reverse translation memory lookup. So if you're an author and you're writing technical manuals and you want to make sure to maximize translation memory usage, having access to the English side is really important, right? Because what you do is you would start to write, and it would suggest, as you wrote more words, it was suggesting. And if you think of it, gosh, now you think about it, what does ChatGPT do? It tries to predict the next word. That's what good GPT models do. Think of this is what essentially it was doing. But here's the funny thing. So we test drove it with a few clients, and they're like, yeah, it's nice, but I have to work in your interface. I hate it. I like FrameMaker. I like Word, back then. No WordPerfect. We were already gone from WordPerfect. It was Word and FrameMaker. InDesign was starting. I like to work in the tools that I like to work.
Mm-hmm.
So while it was a great idea, it didn't fly because it made people work in tools that they weren't accustomed to. So I think that's a really good point, Patrick, that I think the day translation service provider, a language technology integrator, whatever the case is, starts to tell people where they need to work,
You lost them.
yeah, that's not going to happen. And that's why I think, again, the idea of connectors is like, oh, you work in Contentful? Great. Oh, you work in Zendesk? Great. SharePoint? Perfect. That's Notion, whatever it is. And when an LTI or a technology integrator, a language technology integrator, can say, yeah, no problem. That's great. Wonderful. We can grab that data. I think that's where the energy is going to be.
Yeah.
Number 8. This one's like, what? Translation as a feature fully materialized? Yeah, okay, sure. I mean, I love the soundbite. It's like sort of crazy. Translation finally disappears by design. What? I think
it's pulling my previous brainstorms of the episode where we said translation and being invisible is a good thing. So I think it's trying to stroke our egos there a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, but I do think, I think if you could quantify the data and you said that 100,000 tools added translation as a feature last year, that's probably way more than that. It'll be a smaller number next year, only because I think those that have already rushed in, I mean, there will be more improvements, I think, just like we kind of talked about. But yeah, that was a fun exercise. I think we talk about our biggest takeaways usually at this point, Patrick. I mean, what do you got besides we're pretty good at this?
I was going to say, my biggest takeaway is we're pretty smart, it sounds like. No, but I think it's going to be fascinating to see, just kind of taking maybe more of a zoomed out picture of 5 years down the road. I think like I mentioned, I foresee up and to the right for all things language services, where we may be at a plateau right now. I by no means think that's a permanent thing that's going to continue staying flat or plateauing. I think, like we said, the barrier to access to language services has, if not vanished, come down very, very low to next to nothing. So I think you'll see a lot of people start to break in. Lots of buyers break in where they may not have had budget before. And I think you'll see a lot of land and expand of they're like, holy cow, this is awesome. Why have we not been translating all of our content forever? So that's, I think, while we may be at a crossroads right now of plateauing, I think I'm confident that things are going to trend up and to the right.
I think for me, Patrick, yeah, great takeaway. I would agree with that. To add to that, I think that free and fair markets are what drive our economy, our international economy. And selfishly, I'm looking at the world through the lens of a translation provider. The more manuals, the more releases, the more software updates, the more websites, the more everything that needs to be translated to support international business is a good thing. It's good for our world economies. It's good for our financial markets. And I hope that changes. That would be like, for me, like kind of the overarching thing is that the translation industry now, more than anything, needs more top of funnel. It needs more projects, and it needs more people that are wanting to break down language barriers that we didn't think we could break down because we either didn't have the technology, the speed, or the ability to deliver at a lower budget. And I think for me, that's my biggest takeaway. And I think it's sort of the overarching theme, whether we look at 2025 or 2026. So Benjamin Franklin, money that makes more money makes more money. So I think we need investment. We need more deals. We need more fluidity in all the markets. That's my crack at being an economist. You probably won't hear that again ever because I'm not an economist. So
Not yet.
Not yet. I might develop 30 years of running a business. Maybe it's got a little bit of we've seen a thing or two, Patrick, I think. So
Yep.
All right, for this episode of Translation Confidential, this is Patrick. This is Peter, actually. That's Patrick. This is Patrick over here. This is Peter and Patrick signing off.